Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 10th REBEC conference in Belgrade and to the Urban Development and Design panel. My name is Alexander Leko, and I have the honor to present my guests. Mrs. Sanja Cvjetko-Jerković, head of the Office for Strategic Planning and Development of the City of Zagreb. Mr. Balázs Jelinek, General Manager of the Ligit project in Budapest. At this moment, for sure, the biggest museum project in Europe, probably in the big part of the world as far as I know, and a huge project anyway in this part of the Europe. And the last but not the least, Mr. Milutin Folić, the city urbanist and planner of the city of Belgrade. As you know, subject of our discussion should be urban development, a topic that cannot be covered in 1 hour panel, but a topic where we could scratch on certain interesting and maybe tricky items, especially for our guests. I hope that it won't be too tricky with them, but I will try to design the discussion as interesting as possible. Urban development is something that is known to the humankind since the start of the existence of human settlements. It gained its forms during the ancient times, became a science, first written statement about it we have from the first century, let's say, written theoretical text from the 1st century before Christ. Marcus Vitruvius Pollio, Roman architect and builder, did his 10 folios on architecture, where one is dedicated to the planning of the cities, of the urban sites. Thanks to him, we have this treasure, although one can also say that his work at that time was more or less a job application because he did it for the Roman emperor to show his knowledges and to get the contracts. It's something similar what we do nowadays. Unfortunately, nothing has changed. Urban development, I can say maybe it's a bit sharp statement, but this didn't change very much throughout these 2,000 years. Because the humankind and human needs didn't change that much. We have gained the technologies, but our needs and purposes remain more or less the same. I'm afraid that, or it is a fact, that behind a serious urban development there has to be also a serious power that pushes it, and that power is usually the ruling or a political power. Without it, the planned urban development can hardly take place. Unplanned does take place always by itself. And starting at this point, since we have one big project in our neighborhood, and that is Ligit project, I will jump over, which isn't nice, over the lady whom I meant to introduce first with her speech, but ask Mr. Jelinek if he could tell us shortly, represent the Ligit project, and tell us certain mechanisms, how does it influence the urban development of Budapest, how it took place, how it was started, how it was planned. Please, Mr. Bell.
Okay, so welcome everyone. I would like to first of all thank you for Alexander for having me here, and I'm happy to introduce you the Ligit Budapest project, which is one of the, as Mr. Leko said, one of the largest cultural development in the world, and definitely the largest one in Europe at the moment. My name is Balázs Jelinek, and I am a project director in the project, and I am responsible for the development of the major buildings part of the project. So just to have a grasp, what we are discussing here is, this is the the complete image of the Liget project. Liget means park, basically, and what we are developing is the city park, very plain name, but it is its name, which is the second largest park in Budapest. It is in bad shape, and it has some cultural heritage that we are building our development on, but I will get back to that later. So this is what you see here, is that green spot in the city that we develop. We will do buildings and park infrastructure, and I will also tell you a little bit about how it influences the rest of the city, especially the close neighborhood of the city park. So this is where it is. I don't know how many of you know Budapest, but I think the Hero Square is quite a monument, so probably most of you know it. The city park is right behind that. So it is basically downtown, very easily accessible, as you can see. It is easily approachable either by car or public transportation, and it is a very high value property because of that. So what we are doing is we went back and see what was the history of this park. It's been started to develop in 1896 for the Millennium Exhibition of the foundation of the Hungarian state, and at that time, as you see, there was a lot of buildings in the park built. They were mostly temporary, but some of them remained. So this is the heritage that we base our idea of project on. This is how the city park looks right now. This is the Petőfi Event Hall. It is a very bad shape building. It's a very bad shape at the moment. This is another building in the park, just to have you some image how it looks at the moment, or actually these are already deconstructed, but how they looked half a year ago. And this is also a big problem, parking, which we will handle. So I will let you know one by one what sort of buildings we do in the park and where we do it and how we develop the park in parallel. But we also deal with the parking situation, because this is a parking space for 1,200 cars every day, and it is actually part of the park. So I don't know about you, but we are not really comfortable with having a very high value property in the city, which can be used for leisure and other green activity functions, and it is used at the moment for parking your car. So we will put all these cars underground, and we will rethink why this parking area is here and how we can resolve the situation by putting it somewhere else where actually the need is. So this, as you see, it requires immediate action, and what we do is we believe that it has a right basis based on the history of the park. So as you see here, what is purple is new building built on either hardscape area or on the spot where existing building were before. So we deconstruct and build new buildings. This is the purple ones. What is orange? That is refurbishment of existing buildings. And what is yellow? That is buildings that are not under our property management and that won't be changed in the project. And of course, as you see, there is the green area of the park, which will be completely renewed. So this is how we expect it to look in 2020, where the project ends. And I'll just go through very briefly, if I can, what sort of projects we have in there. We have the new National Gallery designed by Sana. It's a 50,000 square meter building, and it's going to host the National Gallery of Hungary, which is actually at the moment in the Buda Castle, but it will move from there to this new building. It is located on the spot where right now we have the Petőfi Event Hall that I showed you. This is the Museum of Ethnography, which is designed by a Hungarian architecture team. It's a 32,000 square meter building, and they won the architects won the contract over some really famous firms like Zaha Hadid and BIG, because we organized international design competitions for every major building in the project. This is the Museum of Ethnography. This is the Pondon Park. It's a biodome. It's pretty much like the Eden Project in England. It's a subtropic cupole that is the extension of the existing zoo. We have the extension of the zoo in the project also. It is in the city park, and the zoo is the most visited cultural attraction in Budapest at the moment, with 1.2 million visitors by year. This is the reconstruction of the Museum of Transport. This is a building that was built for the Millennium Exhibition in 1896, but it was then bombed down in the Second World War and partly recovered, and then we had an extension to that in the 70s, which was not very successful, but we will rebuild the building to its original glory. Of course, we need to keep in mind that we will do a 21st century museum in there, so there are some elements that change. For example, the cupole, which will be a viewpoint for the visitors of the building. This is the House of Hungarian Music. It's the white building that you see in the background that is designed by So Fujimoto, and we are in the process of selecting the general contractor for that building. The idea of the building is that it lets the whole park flow through underneath the building, and the main functions are in the roof and underground. It is also built on a previously developed site, so we had office buildings in there, and it's already deconstructed, and we are ready to start the construction sometimes the beginning next year. So what we do is new buildings and refurbishment. We like to call it the mixture of the old and the new, and we have worldwide appreciated architects who we believe that they do worldwide appreciated architecture in the project. What I have not talked about yet, and just very briefly I would like to mention, is the park itself. So it's a 100-hectare park. That's 1 million square meters, and we will renew that completely. We have sustainability strategy and ecological strategy to renew the park, and we will do running tracks, we will do sport tracks, we will add toilets, and we will add hospitality functions like small restaurants and kiosks in the park for the visitors. This is how we expect it to be. And yeah, just one important thing that I missed, that we preserve the trees of the park. So every tree that is affected by the development of the buildings will be either relocated or will be, if it's not feasible to relocate it because of the expert's opinion, for example, because if it's a not Hungarian sort of tree, or it's allergic or damaged or ill, then we will just remove it, and we will replace it with other trees. And but we try to relocate most of the trees that we can, and we relocated 5 trees last year, and at the moment all the 5 trees are in very well shape, and we are quite proud of that we could do that, and we think that the future looks bright in terms of the tree relocation. We do BREEAM assessments in two level. We do a BREEAM communities assessment, and we do BREEAM assessment for each project as well. It has several advantages. Probably we will talk about it in the panel, I don't know. Also, what I would like to mention is that there is an idea behind the project how it is going to be feasible, because we expect the project to pay for itself in 15 years, and this is very extraordinary amongst the cultural developments, because it's not usually it is made by the state, and it's not made to make profit. But we think that with such an extraordinary project built integrated with the existing function of the city park, it will create 1.5 million increasement in the guest nights of Budapest every year. And this is the financial sort of core idea of the project. So we try to do a touristical project and finance the development of the park also with the tourists and make it feasible and sustainable in terms of financing as well. So what I just one last thought is that the Liget project will also bring benefits for the people living around, and as it was mentioned for Belgrade in the panel before, we expect the hospitality developments to grow in the next couple of years quite a bit around the city park, which will also increase employment and increase the wage. So this is an 800 million euro added value into the project, into the city park. Sorry, it's an 800 million euro project, and we'll do this between 18 and 21. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jelinek. We have heard a lot of elements of the Liget project. What I would like to come back shortly is just strategic planning, cultural planning, and the political power behind it. And with that, I would like to introduce then our discussion, if I can, in that direction, because I think that these are the most important, actually, elements that are influencing the urban development of the contemporary cities and the urban surroundings.
Can I?
Yes, please.
Okay. I don't know whether to start from cultural strategies and planning to urban planning. I prefer starting with power, because those who are powerful and rich have always built. So it's understandable that the development, especially on a big scale, is related and is tightly connected to the power and politics. And that's a fact. I mean, you mentioned Vitruvius. It's been like that since the Romans and even before, and it's like that now. There's nothing bad about it. What we are experiencing in ex-socialist countries is this change that happened in respect to the capital. Before, we were used in planning, in urban planning, to plan for one client, and that was the whole state. But now we are still having difficulties in changing processes, and that is visible in all ex-socialist countries in relation to capital, and that's something we are working on. And must be, in my opinion, underlined as one of the strategic problems. Coming to cultural strategies and all strategies, we all know they are like good plans and good plan of wishes, but if you don't have the three elements, the power that comes from that strategy, money to implement it, and a good PR, those strategies aren't worth a thing, nothing. So that's also one other illness that we have. We have good plans, we have good strategies, we are having problems implementing them. What we changed in the last period in Croatia is that we've tied the the strategies and the annual budget. So the annual budget of each municipality must be tied and tightly related to the strategy. So in that way, we are forcing people to make strategies happen, said in short. Yeah.
Thank you, but does that mean that the strategy can be planned only on the basis of budget? Is it a short-term strategy, or because the long-term strategy should be actually planned on the basis of needs and visions?
Of course. Of course, every strategy is, you have those which are short, but those which are concerned to the big scale of the city are planned in, let's say, for a period of 5, 6, and more years. Each year has its own scopes and, let's say, steps that must be undertaken in order to fulfill the overall plan. But what I was saying, that we have also many laws that are not respected in our countries. And not to say that we have urban plans which are ignored, and we can witness that in Croatia by the fact that we have, what's the word in English, legalizirali.
Legalization.
We have had 1 million requests for legalization. That means that people don't care about the law and don't care about the plan. They are building it. So what I'm saying, that if you have a strategy, which is like a list of good wishes and good intentions that you have for the future, but if you don't have anything, if you don't have rights or obligations that come related to that strategy, if you don't have money to implement it, and if you don't have a good PR, then your strategy is not worth anything.
Unfortunately understandable. In the case of legalization, my preference would be the strategy of the bulldozer, but that's something that many people do not like. Mr. Folic, how do you, as a city planner, main city planner of Belgrade, see these issues?
Well, what we've seen is in this presentation about Budapest is really great. I must say that if you understand well, this will cost you nearly €1 billion, right? The whole project.
Yes.
Yeah. So I can say that the budget of the city of Belgrade is about 700 million a year, which includes all the kindergartens, public transport, sewage, everything. So as my colleague from Zagreb said, it's really, you know, we all have some great ideas, but sometimes it's impossible. So my question to you is, who is financing it? Is it the city? Is it the state? Is it the public-private partnership? Is it the European Union? Because for us, it's a space shuttle at this point, such a thing, really. It's,
Yep.
We have to...
Oh yeah, okay. Sorry. So, yeah, it is state financed, 100% state financed. State, yeah, Hungarian state is financing the project, and they are financing it over the course of 6 years, I think. So it has started in 2014, and the structure of the financing were fixed in 2015, and we will end the project in 2021. So that's over the course of 6 years, and there is no EU money at the moment in it, but we are discussing the possibilities with the European Investment Bank. We don't know yet where we will end up, but we would like to explore all the possibilities that we have, although at the moment we enjoy the full support of the Hungarian state. Just let me reflect to the planning issue and the strategic planning question, is that Budapest has I'm not expert on that, but Budapest has a strategic planning which is called Budapest 2030 or something like that, and it is made I think 2 or 3 years ago, and in that strategic planning there was no counting with our project. So my question is, how is it possible to make these parties talk to each other, because the strategic planning is made by the municipality usually, and there are a lot of state or market finance projects who are pushed or who really want to be built for different reasons, and as we experience them, they are being built, but I think there are possibilities to govern them into directions which are more in line with the planning that is done by the municipality. I'm just a couple of more thoughts. I'm telling that because what we did is that we created a regulation plan for the Liget project with the municipality of Budapest. We spent 6 months doing that. We had like thousands of meetings and negotiations with them, and they affected the program of the project, and they had really hard expectations what we should do and how we should do it. And at the moment, I can tell you that we are meeting them. Although there is, I have to expect, there is a modification in the program, but that is in the regulation plan, which we also work together with the municipality. But that is because how we go forward in the project, some minor issues change, and we need to get that in line with the planning of the territory. But we do that with the municipality of Budapest, and I think this is the key. That working together is the key.
If I may, for a second. So basically, I agree completely. You have to have in line the city, the state government, and also you have here the municipalities of the, because Belgrade is not, we have 17 municipalities in the city of Belgrade. So unless you have all three in line, you do not have enough power, as you said, to do, and not just to do strategic planning, but to also implement it. And we witnessed it in the last 30 years, because we had a lot of, the same thing in Zagreb and in Belgrade, is that we had a lot of people moving in from the war areas. And at that time, the planning was really not a top priority. It was survival, in a way, you know, to make shelter, to live. And today we are actually suffering from that disease from the 90s. And one of the biggest issues in the city of Belgrade as well is to actually, I mean, what to do with these settlements that were done completely without plan. There is no infrastructure. 40% of Belgrade today doesn't have sewage. 40% of citizens of Belgrade doesn't have sewage. So in a way, also when we make political decisions and we say we want to do something like this, someone will raise a question, wait a second, but what about these people who don't have sewage? I mean, you cannot build 1 billion euros cultural facility without first solving the basic issues for the people. So this is something that we face every day. We are trying actually to do everything simultaneously. We're trying to include the PPP as much as possible, because in that way we are not spending, I mean, at the end of the day, it's always the people's money, even through the PPP. But at this point, we can do more things if we partly do it through the PPP. So we have a few big projects that are ongoing now through this program. It's, for example, waste-to-energy plant, sewage treatment plant, garages, underground garages in the city, etc. But for the cultural facilities, we are still trying to find a way how to make it through, you know, how to make it with someone else's money. Today I'm having a meeting actually with our famous artist, Vlada Veličković. We have an idea, we have a new project for a new gallery, for a new city gallery in Kosončić Venac, which is one of the nicest parts. It's not an expensive thing, it's 3 million euros investment. Comparing to this, it's nothing, right? But we are trying to do it through some kind of co-investment with his fund, you know, so that they invest in it and we just do some kind of direction in which way we want to see it. But it is a big issue for us, definitely, and without having in line the republic, the city, the municipality, it's impossible to do anything. We have one big project that you've seen over there. It's a Belgrade waterfront project. That's maybe the first urban development in the city in the last 30 years that was done from the scratch and that is being executed completely according to the plan. Everything else was done very much not according to the plan in the last 30 years. So I think people are not even used to do according to the plan. It's, you know, they get a permit and then they try to find a way to build another level or to extend it a little bit. It's a huge thing here. Thanks.
I have to jump in this moment, at this point. We have heard from two cities in the neighborhood, Zagreb and Belgrade, that a lot of investors are building ignoring the regulations and ignoring the laws. which is quite interesting. My experience, since I have lived and worked a lot in Vienna, in Austria, is that something like that does not exist. It's a more or less unknown category. If it happens, it is an excess that's being torn down immediately. There are means and ways that the local authorities can act literally within hours and eliminate the excess. Budapest, I don't know, Mr. Jelinek, if you can maybe give us some answer about it. How does it look like there in Budapest if there is illegal building activity, which is quite common for the Balkan countries, unfortunately. But I would like to also hear your personal opinion, because this is a result of non-existing development strategy, from my point of view, and a lack of will of the authorities to deal with the problem. Two of you as city planners, and you, Mr. Balinek, as a general manager, one huge project that should be a magnet for further investment and development of the city. How do you see actually this problem? How would you, or how can one deal with it? But also taking care of the possible consequences that this illegal building activity can have to the surrounding, because it's a fait accompli, but can one allow it to be a fait accompli, or one can maybe reverse it?
When it comes to these difficult subjects, I can't stop myself from trying to, let's say, to ironize it a little bit. During Yugoslavia, perhaps this whole phenomena is a consequence of the fact that during the Yugoslavia there was a TV show, Do It Yourself, which was really, really popular. And, and when I said previously that in Croatia we had something like 1 million demands for legalization, they are mostly concerned, they're like small family houses or additions that they made in time, and but still the result is terrible. And as Milutin previously said, we are also facing problems in providing them a normal precondition for life. Like most of these settlements, they don't have even a normal infrastructure, not to say normal roads, normal, paved pedestrian paths so that children can go to school. I mean, I won't mention parks, kindergartens, and stuff like that. And these settlements are so densely populated that we don't even have space where to put a kindergarten. And these are all problems that we are trying to solve on the national level, because it's an illness that concerns us all. But of course, when this process started of legalization, it was hardly attacked by the engineers, by the planners, by everybody, but still politics voted for it. Because we live, as we commented previously, we live in a peculiar time of democracy. You know, as Foucault used to say, ask a person whether they want to set themselves free, and they will never do that. We wanted we wanted democracy, we wanted freedom, and we are now realizing the difficulties that are coming out from this system, and one is populism. And politicians simply don't want to face difficult decisions because they will lose votes. And of course, everybody in Croatia also voted for legalization, because in that way, if you count 1 million people that demanded the legalization for their house, if half of them voted for the party that brought that decision, it's a bingo. I mean, it's a simple math, yeah. Democracy, as Zizek would say, a democracy is very shallow and difficult system, corrupted, etc. But it's the best one that we have now. What to say? I mean, and not to say that everything is lost, that that we can't do planning, that we can't do strategic development, etc. But we have to be smarter. We have to build our arguments in a more founded way, use all the instruments we have to reach the population, and in that way to gain force, and that's basically it.
Okay, just so having all these problems in mind, I'll just tell to you guys what is the way that we are trying to fight it as Serbia, as the city of Belgrade. What we did 3 years ago, we had, of course, a number of meetings with, between the city and the ministry, and we decided that we need to do some changes, of course, to facilitate the legal builders to get easier the permits, the planning, etc. So what happened is that in last 3 years, we actually speeded up the process of planning in a way that we had, instead of having one planning committee in 2 weeks, we're having 2 planning committees per week. And the result is that we have a new general plan in place. The result is that we have 160 detailed plans adopted in last 3 years. On average, before was 10 to 15 detailed regulation plans per year. So you can see that it's an increase of 3 to 4 times. So it's not 10% increase, it's 3 to 4 times increase. And we managed to cover about 60% of city of Belgrade with the planning documentation, which means that today, unlike 3 years ago we had about 34% of the city of Belgrade covered with the plans. So if you want to get a permit, you go to the secretariat and they tell you, listen, you have to wait for the plan, you cannot get the permit. And then people had some kind of, they say, okay, now I'm going to build illegally because I cannot get the permit. Now, this argument is out because we covered 60% of the city, which means if you take out the rivers, the green areas, it's about 80% of the city that you can go and get a permit. And this is what we did on the city level, and on the government level, on the state government level, with, there was a change of the process of how you get the permit. So there is a new system which is electronic, and with the strict deadlines, how fast you must get your permits. Of course, first half year it was not functioning well, but today it's actually way better. So instead of waiting for a year or two to get the permit, now you get it in a few months, in case if your project is complete. So this is again this lineup of state and the city government in the same purpose, to get the legal builders in place and to invite the big investors so that they can feel comfortable that the plans are being adopted, that they can get the building permits easily without uncertainties that were present before. So this is the change that we made in the last 3 years. So today we have way more legal builders, and that's why the market, the Belgrade market of the real estate is booming in the way that today we have more than 500 active building sites, legal building sites. We have more than 1 million square meters being built today. And I think that even because myself being in a city government and working in the mayor's office, we have every day visits from the potential investors from all over the world, people that before didn't even think of investing in Serbia, like people from the United States, from South Africa, from Britain, etc. Today we have these investors here from Germany, because usually countries like Serbia, like Croatia, we had, at the beginning, we had, most of the investors came from Austria and Israel. And these are the first ones that come into the areas that are trying that are changing. But now we finally made this step that we are now having the investors from farther away, and I hope it is gonna have effect also on the economy. And with this wave, I hope in a few years period that we are gonna reach this level that Budapest has today, to invest more in culture. And
Well, thank you. I have one more question. I would like to draw a parallel, and that is now foremost the question for you, Mr. Jelinek, and then we have also some questions from the audience. We have heard more or less on one side the issue of illegal building activities came floated above. It hasn't been really mentioned, but it came out because it is a serious problem that these two cities, Zagreb and Belgrade, are coping with. We heard also the positive things. On the other side, we have, thank God, about the blooming in Zagreb, as far as I know, has also very positive building activities. But on the other side, we have 300 kilometers away from Belgrade and approximately from Zagreb, Budapest, that's developing at least 700 million euro project in one park area, which isn't that big compared to a city. That it's going to be a cultural, social, aesthetic element of the city and influence not only its immediate vicinity, but probably the whole country with its existence. And that is something that I would like to ask you to underline a bit and explain, please, Mr. Jelinek.
Okay, so I think that just to refer a little bit also for the previous part of the conversation.
Just take the bit closer.
Yeah, is that okay? So I think that we, of course, have the same questions. Like you mentioned that 40% of Belgrade is not applied with sewage connection, but we have it a different way. For example, why don't we spend all this money to hospitals and things like that? And I think they always come. So it's not, no matter where you are, these questions will always raise, and they always be made to gain political advantage, because it is all what we have discussed so far. I think it is in the political range of the discussion, and I don't really want to go in there. But what I would like to confirm is that my belief is that the return of our project is the possibility of doing something that will pay for itself, is the one thing that sells it. And of course there are a lot of key issues why I think we can sell it, but for example we have a very firm quality assurance in our project. There is high sustainability expectations from the very beginning of the project. There are different third-party authentications during the process, and I think that these are the issues that's why I receive constantly investors coming and trying to invest in our project. We are very happy that the state does this for us, but we think that these are the key issue which can answer those questions. Why don't we build a hospital?
It means that will help building the hospitals, actually.
Yes.
Yes and no. I mean, culture is still dancing this dangerous tango with the finances, so to say, because since the 2000, at the level of the European Union, there has been a dramatic shift in relation to culture. In 2000, it was the first time that I heard that culture must be self-sustainable, and it was a shock. Because we were all used to, and we still do function, in Croatia at least, in a way that the government or the city subsidizes everything concerning culture. I mean, the city of Zagreb has funds for culture which are equal to the funds that the state gives to the culture. I mean, it's really absurd. I won't even count the number of facilities that we are maintaining. And it seems a normal thing. And every time we mention that culture should be self-sustainable, everybody looks at us panicked, like, no. So but on the level of European, it's more or less the same thing. I think that considering the fact that culture has gained its own role in the tourist industry, this scope will be possible, so to say, to develop this cultural industry in the direction that it becomes profitable, because the crucial problem of culture is that it's still seen as luxury, as added value that you give or build when you have everything else resolved, like infrastructure, like hospitals, and everything else that you need for your daily life. And if you have something more left aside of funding, then you will invest it in culture. And this is a shift in budgeting all the city and the state funds, setting up culture as one of the priorities. And I think it will be interesting as an experiment.
Sorry, just one quick feedback to that is that I don't want anybody to make mistakes. Liget is based on culture, but it is a touristic development. So it is tourism that we expect to pay for itself, not just culture itself. So this is very important actually, because at the moment Budapest is an attractive city, but we think that Liget can make it to another level. We would like to do this as a family destination. If you look at the program, what we have, everybody can find with a family there a program there, maybe even for 3 days if it's required. We don't think that people will go into 5 museums at once, so just because they are on top of each other in a park. But we think that they will go there to see what it is like to have that sort of family destination and that sort of experience. Because we have the museums there, we have the ice rink there, we have the largest bath of the country there, we have the zoo there, we have the 2 other museums that I didn't mention, and of course we have the park itself. So there are plenty of things to see. And we think that with this development, which is on a cultural basis, we do a touristical attraction that is unique in Europe, definitely. And we are trying to surf on the wave that are the ruin pubs at the moment, because Budapest is very attractive for young British and Western European and American people to get here and for a bachelor party or just party for a couple of days in the ruin pubs. But those people will leave from here with good memories and grow up and have families, and with their families they will want to go somewhere to spend their holiday. So this is the main idea.
If I may, I mean, this tourism is a phenomenon that we are all living. For example, the city of Zagreb has been proclaimed for several years as for having the best Advent, the Christmas market. It gained just this year the prize for the best tourist destination, and the tourism is really blooming. But it's also living serious consequences. That the market of the apartments, especially in the city center, the prices are increasing. There are less and less local people living there. Those who are left are elderly people that don't want to move, and unless we are well aware that unless we don't want to, for Zagreb, the center, to become some sort of a Disneyland for visitors, we have to do something urgently, and we are. We are right now developing, focusing ourselves on the urban voids that we have within the very center, and I myself have invested serious efforts in transforming them in facilities for student accommodation, because I want to see young people living the city. But there are different other levels that we are working on in parallel, because tourism is great. It's really fantastic. It's easy money. It's it's nice. I mean, but tourism is like poison. If you take it a little, it might cure you. If you take it too much, it will kill you. Look at the examples of cities like Venice. That is perhaps the most extreme example that we have in our proximity. I mean, it's a mimic of itself. It's not what it used to be. I mean, it's something like a scenography for a film that doesn't contain a real life. And we certainly don't want that, because the city is not its facades, even though we are renewing 4,000 of them. The city is made of its people. That's the soul of the city. And if we don't have that, I mean, we can invest, we can build buildings over buildings, but it's not worth.
Thank you. The point is that actually urban surrounding is for the people, and then the people for the urban surrounding. We had a question already some time ago from the audience. Gentlemen, would you like? Yes, please. Would you like to? Is there a microphone for the audience, or we have to ask? Yes, there is one. Thank you.
Hello? Oh, is it on? Just a question regarding development. The centre, Hungary suffers from exactly the same problems as Serbia or Croatia. People complain about corruption, people complain about the government taking up too much power, and so on. But what Budapest has successfully done is redevelop the centre. And it's not like a Disneyland. They've developed boutique hotels, but they've also developed business centres. It's not only tourists, it's Hungarians, it's locals, and so on. How they've done it is they've attracted private developers who have developed office centres, retail, boutique hotels, cultural premises, and so on. And for example, walking around old Belgrade, there's a lot of underutilized buildings. It would be in theory, it would be very easy to attract private developers who would build boutique hotels or 5,000 square meters office centers and so on. So parts of Belgrade and Zagreb look like the center of Budapest did 10 or 15 years ago. Sorry, I'm talking too much. What do the two representatives feel that is preventing that happening in Belgrade and Zagreb?
Well, I hope I understood everything that you're referring to. Well, we are now, for example, in Belgrade, extending the pedestrian areas, because we have this strategy to change this hierarchy in traffic, to put pedestrians and bicycles on the top, etc., etc. And we had protests from a number of people who live in this pedestrian area, who were actually protesting against pedestrianization of these areas, because they think that it will change this area into the touristic thing, and without enough comfort for the people to live there. So they were thinking that they'll need to move out, etc. So we had to take a few moves to allow them to park in the public garages for a really non-economical amount of money. For example, we just yesterday adopted the price list for the people who live in the pedestrian area to park for more or less 50 euros a month a car with no limits in the public garage in a pedestrian area. So, but it's only for people who live there. You know, so in this way we facilitate them to continue to live there. Another thing is we are now actually buying some electrical vehicles which will transport the citizens of these pedestrian areas and help them when they come from the market on this, so that, you know, just to facilitate people to continue to live in these pedestrian areas, not to make it just touristical hotspots with just a lot of rented apartments, etc. About the buildings that you're talking about, of course, there is a Belgrade at this point is, as you said, like maybe Budapest 30 years ago, not 15, yeah, something like that. Of course, that's the potential. That's why we have today a lot of investors in Belgrade, because people see that, people feel it. One guy even told me that we should advertise as, you know, come to your youth to Belgrade, you know, enjoy it. You know, come to your 20s or 30s if you are 50 today or 60. But of course we have to deal with that, and we're trying to find a way to mix it in the right way and to learn from our neighbors who maybe made mistakes. So maybe the only advantage is that they went through that, and we can see what happened. And we learned from others' mistakes because we are late.
But there's developers I know who would happily build a 10,000 square meter office complex in Old Belgrade tomorrow if they could get building permission and so on.
Well, look, we have the general plan, which is new, which we adopted last year. We have detailed regulation plans, and there is, of course, a possibility in very near the city center to build mixed-use facilities all over. If we speak about Belgrade Waterfront project, it's mixed-use, nearly 2 million square meters, which is congesting the city. So we are not spreading the city beyond its limits, because we face the problem of infrastructure already. So what we want to do is to put the city back inside, to use the brownfields that we still have, which is like this Sava Amphitheater, Danube Amphitheater, to use all these old factory plants. Of course, if something is not protected, it can be completely new. If it's protected, then it can be redesigned in a way that you protect the old factories and then build whatever new is necessary. And everything we do mixed use. So there is a life created day and night. We're trying not to separate office from the resia.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I will unfortunately have to slowly bring discussion to the end. I've been told already twice that we went over our limit, although I have to say that I'm enjoying the discussion, but that's something else. The urban structures are here for their inhabitants. Inhabitants should be also capable to maintain and live in the urban structures, which is a topic we haven't addressed today, but a topic that has been behind this whole discussion is the politics. The power of the politics and the political decision, and I guess that it is our citizen obligation to educate our politicians, no matter which country they're from, what the urban planning should be. I'm concluding this discussion with this statement of mine, if I may. I would like to thank you very much for your attendance and the interest you showed in this, and to ask you to continue to join the... Thank you very much.
Mikrofon. Da je jedan lijep događaj za sve nas. 6 godina smo mi prijatelji poslani, održavamo stručnjake u praktičnih disciplina. Sa moje strane, sa strane Pijatke Starinja, da ti dajem malu pozornost i boja.